The results of the employee satisfaction survey are in. And yet again, employees complain of not knowing their colleagues, what's going on with the company, or where to find important information. You think indignantly, how can this be? This is all very clearly posted on the company intranet. Ah yes, the intranet. You agonized for months when selecting the right one, only to spend days each month maintaining it, and countless hours trying to increase the usage. Despite your best efforts, it's failing to keep your staff informed and engaged. But don't fret, there is hope. Welcome to the Internal Comms Procast. I am your host, Barry Williams. Today, on the second episode of our two-part series on tools, we cover the 8 reasons intranets fail. We talk to 3 experts to get the skinny on what could be going wrong and what you can do about it. No reason to hold on ceremony, right? You've got 4 intranet articles to write, so let's meet our first expert.
So my name is Tephra Miriam, and I am a communications consultant. And basically what that means is I work to infuse organizations with creative artifacts. And those artifacts reflect a strong vision and purpose. These artifacts can include anything and everything from crafting company core values and creating an internal communication campaign surrounding these core values, such as internal training activities, drafting curriculum or competencies, designing innovation programs, producing internal podcasts in order to increase engagement.
When you launch an intranet, your leadership is usually tuned in to the amount of work that goes into getting it off the ground. But months or years later, when the new has worn off, some leaders struggle to understand why the intranet is taking up so much of the comms team's time. That brings us to the first reason intranets fail: lack of buy-in from leadership.
Yes. So leadership definitely has to be part of the entire intranet strategic plan, and they have to buy into it all. And there's some specific actions that demonstrate that. So alignment is the first thing that needs to happen, and that needs to happen at the top. So there needs to be an understanding of the importance of the tool, which is the platform that the intranet will be built on, and what it takes to really make these types of tools dynamic and successful and useful to the organization. So leaders really need to support internal communication activities, and it has to be made a priority. Presenting content calendars to other leaders in your organization that demonstrate how their contribution will positively impact their teams might be a good way to rally support. But bring them into the planning and help them to understand that there has to be constant action and constant activity within intranets in order to make them successful and in order for the general populace to really gain information from it. Leaders also need to make sure that they approve content and that they approve resources for internal communication teams and leaders to do what they need to do. Deadlines being pushed back or overridden for other work priorities is a sign of lack of buy-in. And if you think about the way high volume content aggregators, such as news platforms and even online magazines, work, they have a process in place to get new content out on a daily basis. And so you have to make a plan and strategize as to the purpose that the intranet will serve. So if you want this to be a daily resource for employees, you need to refresh the content daily. So that means that content is king. And so you have to have checks, balances, and processes to move content out the door on a daily basis. And it can't be bogged down by approvals. And if it is, and if people are hemming and hawing over every piece of content that goes out, there's a lack of buy-in, and everybody needs to go back to the drawing board and kind of figure out, okay, what is important here? Who is our audience? Why are we doing this? And get back to the core values of really the organization and why you're doing this internal communication tool and intranet at all in the first place.
Your intranet is home to content for all staff. That includes the 5 generations currently operating in the workforce: Your stories, events, and videos have to ring clear and true for all of them. That brings us to the second reason Tephra says intranets fail: tone-deaf content.
One of the things that definitely cause intranet failure is content that is tone deaf. And basically it means that the information that is put into the intranet is not relevant to your audience. It's also not in a fashion that a multi-generation workforce can consume. So we have 5 different generations in our current workforce. We have traditionalists, and they were born before 1946. We have baby boomers born between 1946 and 1964. We have Generation X. We have millennials. We have Generation Z that was born after 1997. So an intranet has to have engaging and high impact content that will be able to transfer across these 5 different generations. And it has to be relevant to 5 generations as well, and in a fashion that everyone can receive and learn from, so that they can convert this information into action and ultimately behavior change, which is what we want.
But your generational challenges don't end there. Tephra says the third reason intranets fail is they aren't set up to respect generational content consumption preferences. Here's what she suggests.
There are definitely some essential functions that are key to the success of building an intranet that will really impact employees and engage employees. So you really have to focus on driving information in specific platforms. So we have to keep in mind multi-generational learning, and we have to make sure to include learning styles and platforms that appeal to each generation. So this should include audio, it should include video, collaboration tools. Then we'll also have your text portions and articles, also document sharing and repositories, interactive content. That could be surveys, that could be polls, that could be all kinds of different things that internal communication teams can think of, and also feedback loops so that people can make suggestions in terms of the intranet and what they want to see daily, weekly, monthly, all of those kinds of things. Some interesting statistics around this is that the average person in Generation Z has an attention span of 8 seconds. So short content or videos might work best for that generation. But on the other hand, 93% of baby boomers are on Facebook daily. So if you think about the structure of Facebook, there's interaction, there's images, there's news, and then there's also articles. So they want a full smorgasbord of information, and they want it coming at them, and they want to interact with that information. So maybe a company talk show or internal podcast would serve this generation well. Generation X is also 2 times more unlikely to unfollow a brand that makes statements against their personal beliefs. So that goes back to trying our hardest not to be tone deaf, right? And to put out relevant information so that our audience is engaged, because this is who we're working with. So social media stats can really be used as a sort of indicator as to what people want to see and how multiple generations are carrying out their digital identities on a daily basis.
Coming up next on the Internal Comms Procast, we will hear from an employee with a unique perspective on why intranets fail. Stay tuned. The Internal Comms Procast is sponsored by Circle. Let Circle help you maximize your intranet investment by increasing page views and time on site for staff. Circle makes it easy to get the right content to the right person at the right time. Learn more at circle.com. That's CERKL.com. We are back with 5 more reasons intranets fail. Do you ever wonder what your staff really thinks about your internal communications? You are going to enjoy the perspective of our next guest.
Hi, my name is Amelia. I am a registered nurse by day with a pretty large healthcare facility, and in the evening, I have my own business. I'm a visibility consultant, helping under-recognized professionals build their thought leadership.
So it's not news to you that employees are busy. But Amelia says that overwhelm leads to the 4th reason intranets fail. Checking it just isn't top priority for busy employees. You need to find a way to cut through the noise to have your message heard.
So from my experience with my day job, as well as an employee, as well as working with other organizations as a consultant, I've found that they can fail because not all workers at all levels regularly check in with the internal communication systems. You have some employees who may have been on vacation for a while, and they come in and they get into their workflow, and that workflow may or may not involve checking internal communications. And it's also where to start. Say if an employee has been gone, or if I've been gone for some weeks and I come back, scrolling through all of those messages and emails sent is not necessarily a priority for me personally. So having more than one way to get important information in front of the people who need to have it can be helpful. So I know a lot of people may not enjoy hearing this, but what I have seen work is having a physical way that the communication is transmitted. I know electronic communication is ideal. It saves time. However, having a conversation, building a story around, what went wrong previously and why we now have to do it another way versus just an email that says, hey, team, we're doing it this way now. Be well. I've seen a conversation where a story is involved behind the why behind the change, especially for important communications. Like I said, I have a background in healthcare. Also, what I have seen work is having a Monday memo where there's a required accountability in a way, or responsibility for messages that are sent, where on Mondays or whenever the employee comes in, if they work a couple days a week, when they come in on their first day, they need to sign off that the weekly messages, the weekly memo is printed. I'm sorry for those who want to save paper, but this is just real life, where it's printed, and notices that they need to know about that impact their job are there, and they have to sign off that they received communication that they received and they read the Monday memo.
More and more, employees are seeking meaningful work. Your intranet should inspire your staff, not just deliver demands from HQ. That's why Amelia believes the fifth reason intranets fail is a lack of great storytelling.
So employees, all of us, we want to have meaningful work, right? We don't want to do mindless work. We don't want to just be a widget in a cog or anything like that. That's not fun. We don't like that. That doesn't give us meaning and fulfillment, and we'll stop doing that thing. We'll find something else that gives us meaning and fulfillment. So, it's just important to know, I think, what makes employees tick. What are they trying to do to, win the day? And, definitely brainstorm ways that, that they could relay a message in the way that will help them to win and be successful, and to do what they do even better, and frame it in that way. I'm a fan of storytelling, and oftentimes when there's a message that doesn't land well, or an email that isn't clicked, it's often because the story wasn't being communicated properly, a story wasn't being communicated. It was just a blast of information, and how many blasts of information that we have. However, humans, thankfully, we're all wired for story. We're wired to, when somebody says, like, hey, let me tell you a story, automatically something goes off in our brain where we're open to hearing what comes next. And so, I would just encourage folks to think about, how can they, relay their message in terms of a story of helping their listener win their day and be well and do successful and do meaningful work.
Let's welcome our third and final guest. She will round out our list of 8 reasons intranets fail.
So my name is Rachel Cooke. I am the founder and CEO of Lead Above Noise, and we do leadership and organization development in service of building thriving teams which deliver outstanding business results.
When your intranet came online, it was probably viewed and sold to your organization as the solution to all of your problems. The reality might be a little, different. Rachel says that one barrier to success for your intranet might be a lack of defined goals and strategies to meet them. Rachel explains.
So when I think about things that I have seen organizational leaders do to help drive people towards the intranet, the first thing they need to do is be really clear about what is it that we want the intranet to do for us as an organization. So sometimes leaders will implement the intranet, again, sort of thinking of it as a panacea or the holy grail, when really we need to be thoughtful. Are we looking to use this intranet as a means of communicating critical information like policies and procedures and business updates? Are we looking for it to be a collaborative tool? Are we looking for it to be a place where people are connecting and getting to know each other, talking about their skills and interests and how they can help each other? So the first thing I've seen organizations do really successfully is be very clear about what is it that we want this intranet to do. If they decide they want it to be a communication tool, so a place where employees can go to start to access information on a regular basis, what I've seen them do successfully is start to gamify it a little bit. So if you want to drive the behavior of getting employees to the intranet to look for information, then I've seen them do fun things like create scavenger hunts. Where they will put bits of information kind of stream throughout the internet, and employees have to go and find it. And it's a little bit of a contest, and it gets them into the behavior of getting online. If it's really more of a collaboration that they're looking to drive, then I love seeing organizations do some more connecting offline. So host, an ice cream social or something with adult beverages, depending on the culture of your organization. Start to host lunch and learns or cross-team meetings where employees from different parts of the organization are having these opportunities to connect a little bit more organically, and then start to push employees online. Hey, now you know how to find who you're looking for. Here's how you use the intranet to do that. So it's really about creating the behaviors that you want to drive offline and then gently nudging people online rather than simply putting a tool in place and assuming everybody is simply going to flock to it.
Intranets, especially ones that haven't been modernized, are famously clunky and hard to use. This is the 8th reason intranets fail. They don't function well. Rachel again.
And I would say one of the most critical success factors in any intranet implementation is fundamentally make sure it works. So again, as an organization, before you implement an intranet, it's really important that you understand what it is that you want employees to do with it and on it. How do you want your employees to interact with it? And make sure the tool that you're buying and implementing actually runs effectively and is able to yield that outcome to your employees. Because the most frustrating thing that happens is employees get sent to an intranet. It doesn't work properly. It's clunky. It's slow. The functionality isn't there. And there's nowhere there for them to go. And so what I always recommend is, number one, be really clear about what you're looking for. Make sure you've bought the right tool. Number two, do some pilots. So before you broadly launch an intranet across an entire organization, pilot its core functionality in some small pockets of the organization so you can learn more about the user experience and possibly make some enhancements before you launch it broadly. And finally, support it internally. So as soon as you launch a technology, you have to have a technology support function in place that knows the tool, that understands the tool, and has the resources and the time to actually stick with it and ensure that it is serving its purpose.
And finally, even with a great intranet in place and a wonderful goal set behind it, Rachel says your intranet could still fail if you lose sight of the fact that it's only a tool.
So in my experience, intranets tend to fail because organizations typically look at them as a solution when in reality, they are simply a tool or an enabler of a solution. So I might take collaboration as an example. Intranets are often marketed to organizations as collaborative tools or collaborative technologies. And so often when organizations are looking to enhance collaboration within the organization, they will implement an intranet in the hopes that that will drive the behavior. But the reality is, if at present, folks within an organization aren't currently collaborating, then simply putting a technology in place isn't going to change the behavior. So what leaders need to be doing instead is doing some investigation, kind of getting under the hood of what is inhibiting people from collaborating today. And I've seen that be lots of different things, from competing incentives to lack of connectivity to other people within the organization, to people just not having the time to collaborate. And once leaders can understand why people aren't collaborating today and start to put some solutions in place, then an intranet becomes a great tool or an enabler to help drive the behavior they've already gained some momentum around.
We want to thank all three of our wonderful guests for sharing their experience with us this episode. To keep up with Tephra, be sure to follow her on Twitter and Facebook, and check out her site, TephraMiriamCommunications.com. If you want to connect with Amelia, she's on LinkedIn at Amelia J. Roberts. And Rachel has put together some tips to help your communications drive thrive. Download it at leadabovenoise.com/ICP. We have all of these links for you on our site, internalcommspro.com/podcast. Just look for this episode's post. Internal Comms Procast is produced by Super Awesome Media. Our executive producer is Rachel Foles. Gina Morvek is our associate producer and editor. Our theme music is Please Listen Carefully by Jazzer via the Free Music Archive. Our intro music is Sea of Glass by Connor Sweeney. Thank you for listening.